Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm back at the Bass Hole with Rob Cloutier. We're here on the fabulous California Delta. Everybody knows the wintertime out here can be a grind, but the fish are still out here, guys. The river is beautiful, there's less pressure, and the fish feed throughout the winter. So what we're going to talk today about is some of the baits that you can take out when that water temperature dips, I'll say below 60, Rob.
Yeah.
You can take them out here, you can still catch fish, and you can catch the fish of a lifetime during the winter months. Don't expect to come out, it's a mental deal.
It's not a numbers, it's more of a quality fish. You might get 4 or 5 bites and get 2 or 3 fish, but they're gonna be decent sized fish in that 2.5, 3, 4, 5 range and up, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know, Rob likes to talk about those big fish. You guys know that I'm not tournament fishing anymore. I like to go out and I fish the Delta throughout the winter. I do find that what you're saying, Rob, is true, but there are days when you go out there and you can get numbers of, I'll say, 1.5 to 2.5 pound fish. Let's talk about wintertime baits out here. Oh, and by the way, you said you had, this is a package, top to bottom.
We have a package here. So the baits we're going to talk about here are some of my winter recommendations for the Delta, Clear Lake, Berryessa, any lake that you're going to, as well as the Delta here. We have this package here available on our website, thebassholetackleshop.com. You can purchase this whole thing. I think I have about 10 of these units available. It'll be everything you need to catch fish this wintertime.
Well, great. Great. Winter cover and summer cover are different. A lot of the cover during summertime months is bank related. A lot of the cover for wintertime, it's offshore related, and it's stuff that you don't need forward facing sonar. I think forward facing sonar comes into play more in the winter months if you know how to use it, where to use it, and when to use it. But a lot of it is looking at your downscope sonar, finding ledges, finding points, finding oddities that may be out there. And although they're not a stump on the bank, they are cover, and these fish will be very close to the cover. And what separates the guys in the winter is somebody that can go out there and find that cover and keep their bait within 1 or 2 feet of that cover, whether it's a ledge, a point, maybe it could be a submerged tree, it could be some pilings out there, whatever it is. Think about that. Staying close to cover, but think about honing your offshore skills during the wintertime. So with that, let's talk about the baits, and then I may have some questions for you. And also, Rob, when you talk about these, talk about what you're running as far as gear, especially when it comes to line pound test. Are you using straight braid, you using fluoro, you using mono? Give them a little idea what they should be using when they're using these separate baits here.
Yep. So when I go out, first thing I do is I'm searching for these fish, especially in the wintertime. I don't get out as much. I might be only fishing 1 or 2 days a week. I'm going to look for these fish, and I'm going to get a good search bait here. I go back to that chatterbait right here. This is a shock blade undressed from Picasso. I like this. You can do this with any chatterbait. If you have some older chatterbaits without a skirt, you can rip the skirt off and kind of fish it without a skirt. I like the shock blade from Picasso because that shaft on that hook is extremely long, and I pair it up with a swim bait. So if you look at that shaft, it's extremely long to your traditional chatterbait. And I like this bait because it allows me to put a swim bait on there. This is a Pro Point small batch swimmer, and I like it in the golden shiner. That's that bait right there is what I typically pair that up with. You can pair it up with any Kitech, any pintail. I like the boot tails because I slow it down a lot, and I really just dredge the bottom with it. And again, I'm just looking for fish right now, and I might get 1 or 2 to pop on it and hit it. I'll typically fish it with a high hook set like that where it comes out really high, and I'm again going really slow. 723 chatterbait rod from iRod, the Genesis 3, 17-pound fluorocarbon, 731 reel, and I am just literally dredging the bottom to where this guy is just walking like this on the bottom. I want this thing to represent a bait fish or a goby that's swimming away, and it really triggers these fish in the wintertime, and the key again is to go slow. A lot of guys fire that chatterbait out there and there's like, I like to fire it out there, let it sink all the way down to the structure that I'm targeting and getting by, and I'll just slowly roll it through there to where I almost have an arch in my line. That's how slow I'm rolling this guy.
Is that the color you like?
That is the color I like. This one, not so much. This one's kind of beat up. I had it in a bag with some other stuff. That is typically the one I fish. It originally looked like this guy. Okay. I think it got mixed in with some red in there. But that is it. It is the golden shiner. I find that these fish really like the minnow, the golden shiner. It also resembles a little goby that's swimming out there. In my opinion, it just looks just like it, the V shape of the head and everything. So I like the way that Pro Point made that crunch minnow, the small batch ones. Again, you can do it with any Kitech, any split tail, the Crush Cities, the Hog Farmers, anything like that. I, again, like that boot tail just because it gives that extra flair. Again, we'll go through some more search baits. Again, that spinner bait, half ounce, typically throw a 3/4. But that spinner bait, again, I'll just let that thing sink all the way down and slow roll it back, and I might stop and do a couple twitches on it. Another really good search bait right there.
If you're throwing a chatterbait, should you have a spinner bait on too, or one or the other, and then maybe switch off to a lipless or whatever? So talk a little bit about that so these guys know how to kind of go through their rotation.
Yeah, so typically I'd have that chatterbait and that spinnerbait paired up with each other. That chatterbait, again, I'm going to fish offshore. We're talking about that offshore structure, whether it be a ledge, logs, rocks. I'm looking for grass is what I'm looking for. The grass on the shoreline typically dies off in the wintertime, and I'm looking for those offshore mats in that 10 to 15 foot water range. And I'm not
deep.
That deep, yep. Okay. And I'm not looking for ones that come all the way up to it. Maybe it comes up 4, 5, 6 feet. It gives them something to nest in and hide in the wintertime. I believe that's what they're doing out there. And getting this guy through there, when you start hanging up and you find that grass and you're hanging up, I will throw that spinnerbait down there and kind of get it above the grass, right above the ledge of it, where I'm not dredging this down inside the dirt and the grass, but I'll get this guy right above it to where it's coming right across the top of the mat of the grass right there and slow roll it. That's when these two will be paired up really good. Now, if I'm fishing shallower, it's going to be a little bit opposite. I won't throw this chatterbait in the shallows. I won't. I just don't do good with it. I find it better in the deeper water in this time of the year. I will have this guy on and this guy on. Now, you notice I've switched colors here. Typically on the red guy, the craw pattern here. On this, when I go shallow, I like that brown color right now. These craws are going into a molting stage where they're going ready for hibernation. So they're going to be in the mud. They're going to be coming out of the mud, in the mud. They turn a brownish color.
And is this the crankbait of your choice?
That speed trap, it's a hell of a crankbait. It works. They love it out here on the river. I do the KVD 2.5 and I do the speed trap, and that's typically my 2 crankbaits. I don't get too carried away on square bills. I keep it basic. Now you'll notice I also have an LV 500 up here in that red pattern right there. If I come across craws that are still red and I'm fishing that deep water, again, that deep water, and I'm finding fish, this guy right here is a really good bait. Also a really good search bait, allowing me to find these schools of fish right now. That LV is deadly, and I'm just casting it out there and I'm reeling it, and I'm reeling really slow. And I'm keeping my rod all the way up because I don't want to bury this thing, but I want it to come across the ground like this. And I might pulse it every once in a while and reel at the same time as I'm doing it. Another good search bait.
Rob can talk about dropping your baits down there and working them through heavy vegetation. That's something that you're going to have to learn. And that's where I think it really separates the guys that are winning tournaments compared to the guys that are throwing the same bait, maybe in the same areas. Maybe it's too fast. Maybe they're not comfortable with working them like they have to work them down in the vegetation. That is just key out here in the Delta.
I agree. A lot of these fish live in this grass. That grass is their home. It's their vegetation. So getting down in there, like we talk about with the chatterbait, or getting above it to where they can see it visually with that spinnerbait, is key out here in catching these fish in the wintertime.
Okay, one last question with these 4 baits. You've got a chatterbait, you've got a spinnerbait, you've got a lipless crankbait, and you have a square bill.
Yep.
Do you keep those 4 baits on your deck all the time, or are there just 2 of those baits that you rotate through?
Typically, there's going to be those 4 baits. Now, again, these are my search baits when I find these fish. When I'm starting to get bit, if I get bit when I'm on these, so I'll have these 4, maybe another 4 or 5 rods on the deck as well, too. When I get bit, I'm gonna slow it down. And that's when these rip baits come in and these bigger swim baits come in. That new G-Rat right there, this is Ghost Shad. That rip bait right there is an awesome rip bait out of the package. The hooks are great. I like that color. I like mean green. That, when I find these fish, is my go-to. That will really put a number of fish in the boat when you find them. When that thing hits the water, it almost clears up in the river. So it makes it translucent, and I really feel like it looks just like those dang glass minnows. And let's say I'm focusing on a group of fish, and I'll launch that thing out there. I'll stick the tip of my rod. I use a 610 rod. It's a really light rip bait rod from iRod. I put that rod all the way down there to the reel, and I crank that thing down as hard as I can. And I'm getting that bait down there to that 5-6 foot range, and then I'm right above what I want to fish, and then I'm going to pop it. Now keep in mind, I'm not fishing that in a heavy current area. That bait's not typically what I'd fish in a heavy current area. This is more out of the current. I know these fish are sitting in there, and I can work that bait like I want it to and sit there right above these guys and kind of have them looking at it. And again, I have that Vision 110 up there. This is that natural shad color right here. I like this color as well too. I like all the colors in there, but this one's been a favorite of mine.
I don't throw much either. I'll have to get some of those, that color.
That's a good color out here on the river. There's a lot of good colors out here. It's more confidence in what you find, what works for you, in my opinion, and you feel confident in it. It allows you to work that bait like you want it to and catch these fish.
Okay, let's talk about the price points on these. I know what the price point is here. They're about a $24 bait.
Yep.
You want to change your hooks out immediately on this, so this is close to a $30 bait. What is the G-Rat?
G-Rat's coming in at $13.99, $12.99, around there, I believe.
You can't waste your money on a mega bass jerkbait. They catch fish.
Yeah.
But you're going to see this and say, you know what? For the money, this is my bait right here. Or, you know, a bait that's a little less expensive. So I like that you have different baits in this package in the same, we'll just call it genre, because everybody doesn't fish every bait. I know as long as I've been fishing, there's some baits here that I love to fish and some baits that I know they catch fish, but I don't fish them.
Not throwing it.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, this package, for those guys who are just getting started, this will put you on to fish, and I can see 1, 2, out of almost every one of these baits, I'd throw it right through summertime too. They're not just winter baits, but they in the wintertime you should be concentrating on these baits. So we just talked about these 5 baits. For the guy that's coming out on the weekend, hasn't been on the river for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he's got a jerk bait, a crankbait, a rip bait, or spinner bait, and maybe a chatterbait. If somebody's searching and they just don't know what's going on, how many casts should they make with each bait before they rotate through them, and how often should they be rotating through them?
So now typically, I'm not going to go out and right off the bat, I'm not going to throw rip baits. It's going to take me too much time ripping that, stopping, pausing to look for fish. I'm going to look for fish, right? I'm going to move. I'm going to find these fish. So I'm going to throw either that lipless, the spinnerbait, or the chatterbait to find these fish and see where they're at. And I'm going to look at my typical holes, deeper ledges, grass spots that I know exist, out of the current areas. That's where I'm going to go throw these baits. And
how many casts per bait?
Now I'm going to go maybe. I give it the 7 rule is what I give it. If I got a buddy with me, I go, hey, 7 casts. If we don't get bit, let's get out of here.
Does that mean 7 casts of one bait, or do you make 2 casts with each bait?
I'm going to do 7 of one bait.
And that's going to be how you prospect that one hole.
Yep. If we get bit in there, we're going to slow it down. If we don't get no bites, we're going to move on out. That's it.
And I think that's a good philosophy, but I'll let you know my philosophy. I may only make 7 or 8 casts in there. I may make 10 or 15 casts. It just depends on how I feel that day on that particular point. But I will rotate through my baits. I'll rotate through my baits probably 2 casts, 3 casts, but I want to throw more than one bait on a ledge or whatever just to see if they respond. But just 2 different ways of looking at it. All of these techniques work. There are successful tournament anglers that you can find in any genre of fishing that we're talking about, and you have to make it work for you. And I think we can talk about baits till we're blue in the face, but until people realize that and get comfortable with this, hey, I'm not a very good fisherman, but when I put this on, this is my deal.
Yeah.
Be comfortable with that. You don't have to know all of these baits. It's just the more you know, the better off you're going to be. I'm still looking for a bait that I'm comfortable with all the time. I've been fishing for 50 years. So,
the hardest part about it is there's so much new stuff, and you find yourself steering this way towards new stuff, and you put this one that you fell in love with down. And like a brush hog. We all grew up fishing brush hogs.
Yeah.
Brush hog, 4/0 EWG hook, and a split shot on the top is how I grew up fishing. And I don't fish that ever. It's been 20 years since I've touched that.
And it still works.
It still works. And I've had the best days of my life fishing that thing.
I've had the opportunity to fish with Alan Fong several times. And I go out with Alan, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm watching this guy like a hawk. Because he's, as far as North Delta, I think Alan, you can take all your tournament anglers and everything. I think Alan's number one.
Yeah, he's got it down.
And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to watch this guy every time
Here comes the brush hog.
Every time he pulls his box out, I'm going to be looking at it. And he fishes a brush hog, 90% of the time, and he just makes it work. And he's good at it.
Yeah, he's mastered that technique. That's what we're talking about.
But one last thing before I let you carry on here, and this is kind of something that you're going to want me to say. Yeah, you may know all these baits, but as you go through bass fishing, bass fishermen are gadget people. And it's fun checking out all these new baits, having these baits in your box, catching fish on a new bait. Sometimes I'll change bait just to say I am sick of catching fish on dragging a worm. I want to catch a fish on a topwater or whatever. So you're going to come into this shop, and I'm looking back here, and there are thousands of baits, some baits that I've never seen before, and I'll come in and just pull them off and want to try them. It's just fun to fish new baits.
Yeah, it is.
All right, let's get back to what the heck's going to work here on the Delta.
All right, so we've talked about our search baits and what we do to find these fish. Now we're gonna step in here to slowing it down. A lot of guys will throw that drop shot, that brush hog. Another key factor I don't have up here is just a football jig. I like a football jig right now. This time of the year worked really, really slow. Just your basic, I throw a brown and black football jig, 1/2 ounce with a green pumpkin trailer. It's my go-to year-round, but also a really good bait when you're slowing it down. Now we pull out that worm. You found the fish. Now we want to catch a bunch of them here, maybe some size. We've got 2 worms here by Yamamoto that I really like. The Sensei worm, just your straight tail worm. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just a straight tail, and I like that 194, that green pumpkin black flake. And I'll drop shot this. I will throw the Frenzy nail weight head with this. I'll do a couple different things with that guy. I'll wacky it where I put a band on it. I'll weight the head 1/16, 3/32 head, and I'll kind of work it down really slow on a spinning rod. There's a couple different ways that I fish it. I like that Frenzy nail weight head. That's another good way to fish it. Allows us to get down the bottom and kind of work it really, really slow, and drop shotting it as well.
And these come in a pack of 10 too, so they're not Cincos where you're paying $1 and $2 a bait.
No.
They're a little more pocket friendly.
Yep. And the Robo worm worked fine too. I like the Zoom Trick worm. I like them all. I've just been stuck on the Yamamotos. I really like the Yamamotos. Great worm right there. We'll move into the next one here. We've got that Speed Senko right here. Now this is that same worm, but with just a curly tail on there. Now again, I will rig this wacky rigged, and I'll rip this guy to where that worm tail flirps up and kind of flaps as it's coming down. I'll wacky rig it. I'll Frenzy nail weight it. I will drop shot this guy, and I will also just straight up Texas rig this guy. Little 3/8 head on there, and it's just a 3/0 EWG hook, and I'm getting in the grass with this guy. And I'm looking for grass that's maybe 2 or 3 feet off the ground right there, and I'm looking to punch through that grass on like 10 or 15 foot of water is what I'm doing with that guy.
And one thing that I'll say, this is not a paddle tail worm. When you guys get these, if you're not used to it, they will break, you'll break these off so it's a curly tail. But I suggest fishing them with a paddle tail, seeing what they look like, just so you'll have 2 different variations. But these tails are meant to be pulled off.
Yeah, you could actually do a couple different things with it. Sometimes I will rip it to where it's just a straight cut tail worm. So after I've made that initial rip, I will cut that off right there, and now I have a cut tail, straight tail worm. So there's a couple different ways that you can manipulate this tail into what you want it to do and how to fish it. I like that. Again, back to that green pumpkin black flake. It's just a neutral color. It's what I like. Easy stuff. So moved over to covering water. We got our worms in there. One thing we didn't mention is that A-rig right there. This is also one of my search baits, one of my key search baits here for the next month or two. It's just this A-rig. I like the Picassos. This is a 5-wire, 5-blade. I like these these A-rigs right here. It's like an oversized spinner bait. This A-rig has 2 willows up on top right there, and then 3 Colorados on the main wires. You're only hooking 3 hooks on this guy right now. Again, this is a 5-wire, 3-hook, so this gives you 2 Colorado or willow blades at the top, almost like an oversized spinner bait. I really like this one. It comes in 3 different sizes. I like the smaller one. I throw this guy 50-pound braid and the iRod, the A-Rig Special. I like that one a lot because, again, it's like a giant spinner bait and I can slow it down versus any other one where you have 2 teasers up on top. I like the willow blades up there. It just gives it a little bit more flash.
Let's put this on the shelf, and we can talk about these a lot, and I think we need to talk about them a lot. We need to talk about the smaller ones, the finesse ones. We need to talk about the larger ones. So let's, when we get done here, we'll pull off a couple different A-rigs, and then we'll go into great detail on how, where, and when to fish these.
Yep.
All right, Rob, we've talked about, the rip baits, the crank baits, the spinner baits, fast-moving baits. We talked a little bit about worm fishing. You mentioned jigs. Let's talk about maybe some of the. I see you got some swim baits here. I see you got some underspins and things like that. Let's wrap it up with that. And once again, I'll say everything up here. You have a full package. If somebody comes in, obviously you've got this package put together, and they say, I really don't like a couple of these baits. You'll work with them, I take it.
Yeah, if you want to come in and mix match and do some other stuff here and kind of supplement, we can work it out. Otherwise, or if you just want to set you up a package, you can always call me. Call the shop. It is my cell phone, and I could set you up something and we could ship it out for you.
And something like that, you want to do me a favor, give them a little break on the package, maybe?
Yeah, we've got this bundle right here. I think it's like a $220 setup when it's all said and done, and I think we're around $199 is what we're letting it go for. Nice little package to get you through the wintertime. But yeah, if anybody wants to, work some stuff out and supplement or wants a package built for them, just like I said, just give me a call. Let's talk about getting that big bite. And how I typically get a bigger bite in the wintertime is I like to throw a swim bait, be it either the Pro Point batch swimmers here. This is the 6.5, I believe. That golden shiner color, same as his little one there. G-Rat just came out. This is the new color right here. This is the GC Hitch right here. I really like this color. It just came out. I just got it. It matches this one. I like that swim bait. This is what I'm going to look for on my bigger bite size. So let's say I'm fishing a tournament. I found a school of fish. Is there a giant one down there? I'm going to find out. And I'm going to pair this up here with a flashy swimmer, 6/0 and 3/8. Now, I have 2 colors here. I have a silver blade. I have a gold blade. I typically like the silver blade on an overcast, cloudy day. Early morning, late evening, low light levels. I like the silver blade. I like the gold blade, high sun, bright and shiny. Okay, if there's a lot of daylight out there, I might throw a gold. Water clarity, I might throw a gold. If dirtier water or cleaner water, I'm throwing that gold. If it's dirtier water, overcast, I like this guy. It just gives out a shine. It's just what I've done. Somebody might say opposite. This is just works for me. This is what I like to do. So 6/0, 3/8. Again, I have silver and I have gold in the flashy shiner, and I'm throwing that either. Again, you can do this with any swim bait. I like that color right there. It looks just like the golden shiners that are in the river here. Again, this is my big bite. I'm going to throw this guy maybe that 7, 8, 9 times across a spot where I found fish and see if there's a big guy down there. And I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then next spot. Or I'm going to bring back out this guy and try to get another 2-pounder in the bag.
That's super important, because when you say that to a guy that doesn't fish a lot and he's out off of a point, when you fish these points, if Rob's making 7 casts, he's not making 7 casts to the same area. He's fan casting over, I take it, and you're covering
I'm going to cover
that whole
everything.
area. You don't keep throwing it to the, in one spot on the bank. Any of these baits that Rob's talking about, if you guys are big bait or big fish guys, you like to fish the Delta, you like to fish Clear Lake, I always have great luck with these not huge swim baits. I don't like throwing the HUDs that are 12 inches, but these 6 to 8 inch baits, they're killer up at Clear Lake too. So when do you change from spinner, no spinner, and I guess weight just depends on how deep you are. If you're in Clear Lake, you may want to go with a 1/2 ounce. You're fishing off of one of the points. You got to be down there 20, 25 feet compared to maybe you're in the Delta and you're not fishing more than 6 feet. When do you go with the flashy swimmer? When do you go with this?
So it all depends, really. If I'm not getting bit on it with the flashy on there, I just nick that flashy off, or I undo the harness on it and take it off right there, and I'll fish it around.
And you could put it back on.
You could put it back on, everything like that. So I will take it off here and there, majority of the time. And now it all depends. If it's getting a lot of grass on it and it's getting hung up in there and it's not doing what I want it to do, I will take it off. But typically, I will fish it with it on there. If I'm not getting bit, then I'll kind of experiment with it, take it off. Maybe they don't want it. The fish will tell you what they want. They'll tell you. They'll either eat it or they won't. So that will determine when I'm taking that blade off or leaving it on. If I go to a spot and I know there's fish there, my buddy's catching them in the back on a worm, and I'm throwing this guy, and I might throw it that 7 times and I don't get bit, I might throw it another 7 with the flashy off and give it a rip go. Weight size on everything, regardless, I'm gonna typically fish that 3/8. Be it 20 foot or 2 foot, I'm still fishing that because this thing allows, I cast it out, it's weedless, I let it sink all the way down, and I start my retrieve.
And remember, let these guys know, wind could play a factor in that, or tide, depending on where you're fishing. You may have to go a little deeper. You're giving them a general, I'm going out there 10 times, this is what I'm starting with. If the weather dictates I have to go heavier or lighter, you will move from that.
Yeah. Typically I won't fight it unless it's a really good hole that I know that there's a good fish in there that I can get out of there. But typically I won't fight the wind and the current, I'll just get out of there.
And the other thing is, with this bait here, one thing that I really love with this bait is, and this is something that Bobby Barrick used to talk about all the time, whether spinner bait or this, and I want you to talk a little bit about it. When you're fishing a point or toolies, especially toolies, you want this thing, you can throw this way back up in the toolies. You want this thing bouncing off toolies. You may only get 3 bites during the day. You're going to get 3 bites if you're popping toolies. You're going to get 0 bites a foot out. What do you think the deal is with that?
I think it's when you hit it and you hang up on it and it gets stuck there for that 1 second and it stops doing what it's doing. That's when I think it really triggers that bite, when it pulls off of that toolie and they're watching it. They might be following it from a distance and they're like, and then it hits that toolie or hits that grass or that structure, and then it pulls up and does something weird.
It's erratic.
Yeah, they're like, hey, I'm going to get you. Because I feel like they could catch it. At first, they're like, man, this thing, I might not be able to catch it. And they're just kind of checking it out. But once it hits something or deflects off something, like, that thing ain't right. I'm going to eat them.
I think they think it's disoriented.
Yeah, they have a chance to get it.
It's like there's that 1 second that this bait is vulnerable, and they come up and take it. So that's an old, I'll hit Bobby Barrick up on that. I heard him say that, I don't know how many years ago, and I said, well, I'm not losing a damn spinner bait, on a toolie. I started doing it, and I started catching more fish. I said, it's worth the $2.25 that I used to pay for a spinner bait to catch a few more fish.
And if you're crushing them up there and you're losing, switch to braid. Go to 30-pound braid. You'll get that spinner bait back every time. If they're eating it, and you're fishing 15-pound fluorocarbon, 17-pound fluorocarbon, and you're snapping off or you're losing baits, and they're eating it, throw that braid up in there. Throw that 30, 40, 50-pound braid. They'll still eat it.
And believe me, we're going to wrap this up, but fishing the Delta, I think the art that most beginners don't have is the art of how to get baits that are stuck in toolies and vegetation out.
The right way.
When you're in the Delta, especially when you're using straight braid like I do, number one, you don't rip the bait into any of that to where it gets really stuck. The minute you feel something's on there, you stop, knowing it's a sixth sense that, this isn't something that's going to pull through. You point the rod down to it, and you rip that bait through there, and you get on with your day. It will give you so much more time during the day to fish and not be doing oh, I think I'll get this out. It'll shake through. No, it won't shake through.
No.
You're going to have to pull that boat in. I have bumped my trolling motors. I've had the boat way too close to rocks where, it's not worth that $5 bait or $10 bait. Point that rod down there. Have confidence in your knots, have confidence in your line, and know how much pressure you can put on that and how much it takes to start stripping it through there. That's a huge thing out there. You know that, Rob?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it when I'm with someone and they're doing this, and I say, "Hey, give me that rod. I'm at the front of the boat. I'll help you out." And I grab the rod and point it down there and just pull it through, and the guy's like, "Geez, I didn't know you can do that."
Yeah, my buddy, I loosened it up for you. That's what I did. Yeah. No, you didn't. You just didn't know what you're doing.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the river.